Attain. True Prophet's translation for this verse. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Please repeat. When they have thus enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure,
vast heavenly sex pleasure,
and the results of their pious activities are exhausted,
and the results of their pious activities are exhausted,
return to this mortal planet again.
they return to this mortal planet again.
Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment
Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment
by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas
by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas
achieve only repeated birth and death.
achieve only repeated birth and death.
Fourth, one who is promoted to the higher planetary systems enjoys a longer duration of life and better facilities for sense enjoyment, yet one is not allowed to stay there forever. One is again sent back to this earth upon finishing the resultant fruits of pious activities. He who has not attained perfection of knowledge, as indicated in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmari Asyataha, or in other words, he who fails to understand Krishna, the cause of all causes, becomes baffled about achieving the ultimate goal of life and is thus subjected to the routine of being promoted to the higher planets and then again coming down, as if situated on a Ferris wheel, which sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down. The purport is that instead of being elevated to the spiritual world from which there is no longer any possibility of coming down, one simply revolves in the cycle of birth and death on higher and lower planetary systems. One should meditate to the spiritual world to enjoy an eternal life full of bliss and knowledge and never return to this miserable material existence. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna Krishna Gita NYC. Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachayane Nirvachesha Shanyavani Pastasya Ishkani. Om Agrana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya. Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobi Sham Snapitam Jena Bhutane. Swayamupakadamayam Vedati Sopadantikam. Vande Ahang Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam. Shri Guru Vaisavamsu. Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana. Raghunatha Patam Tam Sadeva. Sadvaitam Savadutam Pardana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva. Sri Radha Krishna Pradan Sahagana Lalita Sri Krishna Kandatasya. Hey Krishna Karana Sindha Dina Vajavapate. Mopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosate. Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. Vrishavanu Sute Devi Padamami Hari Pre. Vansha Kopatu Yasha Kripasanduvi Eva Chapatitana. Pavadebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadadhara Sri Gauraktami. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare
Rama, Hare Hare.
So as we were discussing before we started reading the verse, that there were hundreds of translations of Bhagavad Gita into English, but there was no call to action. People would read it just out of interest. Well, I've heard of Bhagavad Gita. Let me get a copy and read it and see what's there, and then go on with life as usual. But the Bhagavad Gita is based on being spoken by the Supreme Personality, and it's based on that last call to action, Sarvadharma Parityajya. Give up everything else, not just all varieties of religion, but all varieties of endeavors, like trying to get to the heavenly planets or trying to be wealthy and popular and any endeavor in this material world. Give it all up and just surrender to me. Krishna is saying, and don't worry, yes, there will be possibility of reactions because no matter how careful you are, you're going to do something that is generally accepted as being sinful. Just like we usually use a simple example. Even devotees, when you're walking down the street, you're stepping on insects. When you're breathing, you're killing insects. When you're lighting fire to cook, you're killing insects. When you drink Whatever activity we do, practically, we're killing some living entity. And technically, there should be some negative reaction for doing that. But if we surrender to Krishna, and Krishna says, don't worry, Master Chala, I will take that reaction. And obviously, no reaction can affect Krishna because he's a controller of everything. So by the time we get to this 9th chapter, that call to action, final call to action, is in the 18th chapter. Everybody knows 1866, but back in the 2nd chapter, Krishna's already should have already convinced us that we are non-material entities. We are different from these material bodies, and therefore we should try to develop a desire to act on the spiritual platform and thus achieve spiritual results, not just in normal. The high point of material results is what's being discussed here. That after many, many years of biased activities, one can be elevated to the level of the demigods, Swargaloka, where life is much more pleasant than we can imagine. Even on our level of existence, this middle planetary system, Earth planet, middle of the universe. Even here, we see such a disparity of living conditions. I was just glanced at an article about Haiti. They showed a picture of a slum area, all the little houses crammed together. You can barely like walk between them. People there are suffering. And just above, on the hill just above, there's an area with big mansions. Everybody has a swimming pool and this and that. So that's just one example right here in New York City. There are so many examples. Some people are living in the subway, literally. They just go in there and stay there because they have no place else to live. Can barely put together anything to eat on a daily basis. And that happens everywhere. Again, I was in London recently for London Rath Yatra, and I'd gone to the Soho Street Temple, nice restaurant there. And then recently, the devotees have reacquired Sixbury Place, which was the first real Hare Krishna temple in England. And we have not moved in yet. There's still some tenants, and we're going to get them out, and then the place is going to be renovated. But so on the way there, you pass by the famous British Museum. A lot of tourists go there from Soho Street to Berry Place. You pass by the British Museum. At least that's one way of getting there, shortest. And just on a side street, almost practically opposite the museum, there was some young lady, couldn't have been more than in the 30s. It's the middle of the day, and she's sleeping on the sidewalk with obviously all her possessions. So this is the disparity of life here in this material world. Some people seem to be enjoying it all. Anything they want, they can get. Recently, some individual was said to be the first trillionaire on this planet. But what does it mean practically? Whether you're making just a few dollars a day on the street, or you're making 50,000, 500,000, 5 million, it doesn't matter how much you're making. Your capacity for enjoyment in the human form of life is very, very limited. How much can you eat?
Yeah.
And those who try to defy that, there's a limit to how much a human body can ingest. And those who try to defy that, they suffer. Anytime we try to break the laws of material nature, we suffer. And for any other type of sense enjoyment, which falls to 4 categories: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. No matter how much you try, it can't squeeze out more than this body allows you to. Now, on the platform of the demigods, capacity is greater and opportunities are greater. They don't suffer the normal, at least not on a regular basis, ups and downs that we go through here on this level. You could be I make fun, like when I go to Mumbai, people tell you, this is such and such movie stars or big business magnate, that's where they live. But when they come out, they have to breathe the same air that everybody is breathing. They get caught in the same traffic jams on the Mumbai streets like everybody else. You may be riding in a Rolls Royce, but if the traffic is moving at 3 kilometers an hour, that's how fast you're going to go. Yeah, my last trip to India, I think I may have told the story here, but it was funny. The devotee I was staying with in Chennai, one morning he said, let's go to Mahabalipura. It's about a 45-minute drive to Chanjava. So you leave early before the sun rises because you want to get there in time for sunrise. And that road along that coast, that's the east coast of India, So it's called the East Coast Road. And at that time of day, 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's pretty empty. There's nobody there. So one person in a Lamborghini went behind past us, and there was a van following him. So I said, What's that?" He said, "Oh yeah, there's some guy, famous movie star. The only time he can drive his car fast is that time of day. If you ask him to get up to go to Mongolarty, but to get up early so he can drive his car 100 kilometers an hour, 150 kilometers, he'll do that because it's the only time he can enjoy it. As the sun comes up and people start going to work, you can't do that. You can't go that fast. And the van behind was his security to make sure that nobody bothers him. So, like that, our capacity to enjoy is very limited. Now, on the platform that's being discussed here, platform of the demigods, again, they have great capacity. They don't suffer from pimples, not even pimples. Everything is perfect physically. In the Mahabharata, you'll read that they, when a couple wants to have a child, the child is born and then immediately grows up to be indistinguishable from the parents. They don't go through teething pains and colic and stuff like that. They just immediately become adults, and you can't tell who's mother and who's daughter or who's father and who's son because everybody's handsome and beautiful. But when you're, as Krishna is saying here, when your pious credits run out, because you get to the demigod level by engaging in pious activities. Now, what are pious activities? We're talking about material piety. Material piety means giving in charity. To the right, as Krishna will say later on in the Gita, there's charity in the mode of ignorance and mode of passion and the mode of goodness. And then there's transcendental. If you give in charity in the mode of ignorance to somebody who's just going to go and buy a bottle of beer or whatever, you get it back 1 to 1. You give $1, you get $1 back. You give on a little higher level, you may get it back 1,000 to 1. But if you give, Prophet says this in one place, if you give money to a devotee of the Lord, then you can't calculate the return that you're going to get. And that's why people are encouraged. Sometimes foolish people think that people say you're worshiping God and God is the source and owner of everything. Then why do you have to ask for money to put on a God festival? God should just, give you the code to his ATM and you just go as much dollars as you need to put on your Rath Yatra or whatever. No, God is giving you an opportunity to use your money in this service so that you get the benefit. That's the understanding. So devotees shouldn't be shy to ask for and accept money from the public. Devotees are allowed to do that. Brahmanas in general are allowed to do that. What to speak of those who are on the Vaishnava platform. Patan, patan, yajan, yajan, dana, particular. These are the 6 activities that a Brahmana is supposed to engage in. Patan, patan. And the Brahmana is supposed to learn the scriptures and teach others. Yajan, yajan. Brahmana is supposed to learn what is the proper form of sacrifice to engage in. And in this age, that means the Sankirtan Yoga, and then teach others how to perform that sacrifice. And then dana particular means they're allowed to accept charity, but not for getting rich. Prabhupada said many times that a Brahmana remains poor. You give him 1 lakh of rupees or $100,000 in the morning, by the next day he doesn't have anything because he'll spend it in Krishna service. That's a real Brahmana, not to collect and pile up somewhere just to be happy that I have millions of dollars in the bank. That's not a Brahmana. That's not a Brahmana's mentality. The Brahmana is allowed to collect and take whatever he needs for his maintenance, and then the rest he gives in charity or uses for the Lord's service. So by engaging in material piety, one attains this level of the demigods. But it's, Prabhupada said, you're just, our Krishna says in the translation in verse, that you're simply buying future birth and death. That's all it is. Because when your pious credits run out, just like a bank account, if you put in 100,000 and don't put anything else, and nowadays the interest is minuscule, 0.04% or something. Every day you spend some money, no matter how frugal you are, one day that money is going to run out because it's not growing. So the pious bank account is like that. The bank account of material piety is like that. When you get to a certain level, you're allowed then to take birth on the planets of the pious individuals, the demigods, or demigodly like. They're quite a few categories of living entities in the material world, and amongst them, there are those who look like humans, but they're actually on a higher plane. Purusha means man, and there is a planet of Kim Purushas. They look like human, but they're not. Kim. Kim means what? What kind of human is that? Because they look human, and then there are Kinnaras. Nara again means human being. And when you put Kim in front of it, it becomes Kin. So the Kinnaras, again, they kind of look like humans, but they're just imagine if you went outside right now and you saw somebody who was 18 feet tall and glowing like the sun. You may have two arms and two legs, but you know this is not an ordinary human being. So the demigods are like that. Superficially, majority of them they look human-like. One head. Not everybody has four heads like Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is a special case. So externally, they look like human beings, but you can tell right away this is not an ordinary person. But even when you appear in such extraordinary society, like the Kinnars or the Kinpurushas, or you're one of the members of Indra's court, still it has to come to an end. You're not allowed to stay there forever. Just like our constitution does not allow our president to stay forever. After two terms, he's supposed to leave. So it's like that. After a certain term, living on the demigodly, and then what we have here is nothing by comparison. People here are envious if you drive an old broken down Toyota and somebody goes buying the latest Mercedes or whatever. But we see what's happening in Russia right now. A lot of people in Moscow, they have the latest Mercedes, BMW, but they have no gas because of this war is going on. So what's the use? It becomes just a pile of metal and plastic like any other, like a Lada or Volkswagen, or it doesn't matter. So, so-called opulence on this planet is a joke. Whereas the demigods, at least they're on a little higher. If they want to go from their planet to the Earth, they don't have to book a, ticket on Elon Musk SpaceX or something like that. They just call up with their carrier, they jump on the back of their bull Nandi, like Lord Shiva, or they jump on their peacock or whatever, and they come down to their planet. So they're not under the same constraints that we're under. Again, you have your fancy plane or whatever. If it doesn't have fuel, you don't go anywhere. It becomes a huge liability. And people don't realize that. Generation after generation. When I grew up, everybody knew a boat is a money pit. Don't even think of it. But generation after generation, people who can barely afford it. Oh, I like the freedom of the sea. So they go invest in a boat, and before they realize it, they can't afford to keep it, to maintain it. And it's literally a money pit. If you want that boat to function properly, you have to maintain it properly. If it's a big enough boat, you have to hire a crew to run it, and it's just a money pit. So intelligent people don't buy into that. So similarly, the devotees being endowed with intelligence by Krishna, they don't buy this form of existence of piling up pious credits so you go take a birth on the planet of the demigods, and then it runs out. You can't stay there forever. And even while you're there, we have experience. I'm sure we all do. We're all adults here. Envious people. Somebody who's just envious of you. It doesn't matter what you do, how nice you are to them. It's just maybe some past life connection or something. There is envy you. They don't want to see you succeed. They get mad if you do better than they do. But even on the demigod level, right now we're in the fourth canto in ISKCON Brooklyn, 19th chapter. Prithu Maharaj is performing 100 horse sacrifices. And Indra, the king of the demigods, he gets envious. He gets worried that this living entity is going to come and take my position. So he comes and tries to break up the whole thing. So even on that level of existence, there's envy. The demigods are devotees, but they're subcommon devotees. They have material desires. They're not pure devotees like a Srila Prabhupada, whose only business is to satisfy Krishna. And we, again, within our society, I'm sure we've experienced that. You're dealing with some neophyte person, they're chanting Hare Krishna, taking prasadam, and living with devotees, or at least associating with devotees, but still the envious nature doesn't go away right away because it's been the de facto mentality for so many lifetimes that it's very difficult to give it up. So Krishna starts this chapter, ninth chapter, by telling Arjuna, idam tu te goyatamam prabhaksham anasuyave. Asuya means envious. Anasuya, when you put the prefix an before asuya, it becomes anasuya, not envious. He said, because you're not envious of me, I'm going to give you this knowledge of the ninth chapter, most confidential knowledge. So as we progress in our devotional life, we have to be very, very careful to avoid being envious. Krishna is in complete control. Our main business in life is purification of our consciousness so that we can become more of an asset to Krishna and less of a liability. If one is a pure devotee, then one becomes an asset to the Lord. The Lord can use, like he's going through this whole conversation with Arjuna to remind him that he's a pure devotee and therefore you should do what I want you to do, which in this case is fight and kill your grandfather, kill your guru. Right now, we're not being asked to do that. We're not being asked to kill anybody. Just kill the envious mentality.
Instrument, we become instrument.
Kill the envious mentality. If we do that, then we become happy and we can pass on that happy mood to others. If we don't, then people become confused. They're attracted to Krishna consciousness. You go out and stand in the street, you distribute books, you have festivals, they come, and then after some time they say, you guys are not happy. No, happiness doesn't mean walking around grinning all the time. Some of you may have heard the story right here, I think is where it happened. That Prabhupada had given Jadharani a photograph of himself and said, make a painting, just like he had this painting about this, said, make a painting. So Prabhupada kept checking with her regularly. Where's the painting? Oh, I haven't done it yet. And finally, Prabhupada said, why haven't you done? She said, Prabhupada, you didn't look very happy in this picture. Prabhupada said, I was very happy. So the devotee doesn't wear the happiness, like some big clown face or something like that. They're happy internally. But as people get to know us, they should see that internal happiness. They should see that this person is happy in spite of whatever is going on in the world. All the problems in the world, all the threefold miseries that seem to be still there, that we were discussing our bodily pains earlier. It's not that because we're chanting Hare Krishna that we don't get bad knees and bad ankles and internal problems. These things are there because we're in the material world. But that's not what defines the devotee's happiness. The devotee is not only happy when everything seems to be going well. As I like to say, and it's not just me saying, it's a fact, there are two extreme ways in which our devotion mentality can be tested. One is when everything is going well. The bank account is huge. You're happy, your wife is happy, your children are happy, everybody you know is happy, and nobody's bothering you, and the government is not trying to take your money. Everything is going well. Your health is great. That's one extreme test. Then the other extreme test is when everything is falling apart. Your health is down the drain. People are giving you trouble for no reason, envious of you, and the government is investigating you, and everything is going wrong that can possibly go wrong. Now, how you react in those two extremes will say whether you're a devotee or not. The neophyte devotee, when things are really, really great, they tend to back away or run away, one or the other. If they don't run away, then at least they distance themselves. I don't really need the Hare Krishnas anymore. I'll go once in a while, John Mansame. I'll make a show of putting $100 in the hundi, and everybody will see that I'm still a devotee. King Kuti says that when you have John Maishwara Shotashuri, Edamana, Marakpama, Ivarhatya Buddhatum, Vaitwam, Akinchana Gochara. Those who are infatuated with Janma, high birth, I belong to this family, this high family. And this goes on in every country, not just here in the United States. In every country, you have the elites, right? Just because you take birth in this particular family now, I'm by birth an elite. You haven't done anything. One of the interesting points about this part of the Bhagavatam that we're in is that when Prithu Maharaj appeared, people started glorifying him. And he said, no, don't glorify me. I haven't done anything yet. When I actually do something, then you can glorify me. But in Kali Yuga, people want to be glorified in advance before they've done anything, even if they just have an idea. I think that this is, and then they want people to go, whoa, wow, what a great idea. The Bodhis tried that with Prabhupada. Prabhupada, whenever somebody would have some bright idea, Prabhupada would say, let us see. Because he knows, it's not guaranteed, even if it's a really good idea, that it's going to come to fruition. And even if it does, where did you get that idea from? Krishna's in your heart. So whenever we have a great idea, and even if we're able to implement it, credit goes to Krishna. So those who are actually devotees, they pass both of those tests. When things are really great, they remain Krishna conscious, and when things are really bad, they remain Krishna conscious. For the neophyte, it's actually easier to remain sheltered when things go bad, because where is he going to go? Oh, my dear Lord, whether you're Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or whatever, Hare Krishna, things go bad, you try to take shelter of God. My dear Lord, I'm really suffering. Please help me. But for the neophyte, the other extreme is very, very difficult. When things are wonderful, people are glorifying you, you have money like anything. Not so easy. Not so easy. You may still have some devotional sentiment. Like when I was in London, also at Soho Street Temple, one day I was there taking prasada, and this huge limousine pulls up, and the driver is an older white guy, but the passenger is an Indian couple. He opens the door, they come out, they go up to the temple, they stay a few minutes, they come back down. So in India, there's still the vestige of understanding that I have to do something in relation to Bhagavan. And that's why they can, birth after birth, appear in rich families or even go to the heavenly planets, because they engage in pious activities. They bow down in front of Bhagavan, they give some sometimes substantial donations, they give, sometimes they even give land or enough money to build it, whatever. They're not necessarily interested in becoming pure devotees, but they have enough devotional sentiment. And therefore, the reward is, yes, you can take birth lifetime after lifetime as a rich Indian businessman. If that's what your desire is, Krishna fulfills all desires. He's not going to force you to completely surrender. You have to do that voluntarily. So if the limit of your desire is to be born as a rich business person, then Krishna can do that. No problem. Or you want to go to the heavenly planets, live on the demigod level, Krishna can do that. But ultimately, we should desire only to please Krishna. And then it's up to Krishna wherever he wants to put us. He wants to leave us on Second Avenue to preach lifetime after lifetime, or he wants to take us to Mayapur or back to the spiritual world. The devotee doesn't care. Narayana Paraksave, Nakutasena Vibhiti, Swarga Pavarga, Narakeshu, Api Tulyarta Darshana. That's a nice verse in the Bhagavatam. That those who are Narayana Parayana, they are sold out to Narayana Krishna. They are sold out. They just want to please them. Narayana Parayana. They don't care where they're sent. Wherever they go, they're going to do the same thing. Swarga means like here, heavenly planets. Apavarga means the spiritual realm. Narakeshu means the hellish planets. It doesn't matter where they go. They're going to do the same thing. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. That's Prabhupada's example. He was sitting down in Vrindavan, completely in a spiritual atmosphere. Could have stayed there the rest of his life as a sannyasi. But based on the word of a spiritual master, he gave up that comfortable position and came to this place, New York City, hellish place. The Bowery, even worse than Second Avenue. I remember in 73 when I joined in Henry Street, we used to come to the Bowery on Mondays to distribute whatever was left over from the Sunday feast. And it was good prasada. The Sunday feast back in the mid-70s and here in New York, it was fantastic. You'd have plain rice, fancy rice, wet subji, dry subji, sweet rice, halwa, those were given. But then on top of that, you'd have sweet samosas and then salty samosas. It was like a huge steal. We would eat so much. And it was good. It was all good. And so whatever was left over, we would heat it up and bring it and have a Harinam on the Bowery and distribute to the, because of the connection to Prabhupada. We figured there's a good place to go. Prabhupada lived on the Bowery. We should go and distribute there. But most of the people, as you know, on the Bowery, they're addicts or alcoholics. So their taste buds are gone. So then you give them a nice plate of prasadam, they would spit it out, or sometimes they would throw it at us. Wouldn't appreciate it.
Okay.
Wonderful prasadam. So, but devotees like Srila Prabhupada, he persevered. He wanted to spread Krishna consciousness because it's the only way to make people happy. It is the only way. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way, except in this age of chanting of Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. So we'll stop here. If there's any discussion, anybody has any questions or realizations? I mean, you all get credit because you are staying here in New York and preaching Krishna consciousness. That's not ordinary. I'm sure any one of you here could go to Europe or India or wherever and live in a nice secluded place and totally avoid a lot of the bad things that happen here in New York. But you're staying here. I'll just mention this that Krishna Kripa, Krishna Kripa, he told me that I, the fourth game of the NBA series was here in New York, and the devotees had started from the first game in New York. They went to the watch party. So they were there for the fourth game watch party. They were chanting Hare Krishna, and the police came and told them to stop and made them leave. And the fans started booing. Because by that time, the fans were used to having the Hare Krishnas around their watch party and they liked them. So there are some good sides in New Yorkers. There's a lot of bad stuff here, like this. The noise, Papa was dealing with that noise when he was here. It's still going on. Ambulances and traffic going by. And now you don't have the Puerto Rican kids that used to open the door. No kid. They're gone. They're on. But there's still so much disturbance here. But New Yorkers do have their good side. Some of them are attracted to the Harinam. So, yes, you had a question or comment?
Oh yeah, Prabhu, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure. I love your style, the way you teach. Yeah, I like what you said that even the most richest person in the world or the most poorest person, because of imperfect senses, still enjoy the same way, and it's like there's only so much you can enjoy. And like you said, 5 minutes, if everything is in traffic, you can go faster, you can do this. If you come out, you still breathe the same air. That's beautiful kind of realization.
It's an experience that we all have, but we don't allow it to sink in. That's the problem. We still keep a little hope that some or other I will enjoy. Everybody else has been failure, but I will figure out a way where I will stay in the same environment, birth, death, old age, and disease, and somewhere or other I will enjoy. It's not going to happen.
I will beat the system, so to speak.
Exception, right? So Krishna consciousness really begins when we allow that fact to sink in. This is the way the material world is designed. If you really want to be happy, you have to become again a devotee of Krishna. That's the only option. And when we allow that to sink in, and by the time we get to this ninth chapter, we should at least theoretically accept that, then we can make progress.
Or devotee always remembers God instead of like when everything good, you forget God. This devotee always remembers God or takes all the struggles, tribulation in stride.
Krishna says, from one who sees me everywhere and who sees everything in me, from him I'm never lost, and he's never lost to me. So that's the practice. That's the real meditation. We're chanting, but it's supposed to affect our vision. Our vision should change so that we see Krishna in every circumstance. The rent goes up. I lost my job. Whatever happens, somebody you haven't seen in a decade becomes a rich person, calls you up one day and gives you 100,000. So many things can happen, good or bad. No matter what happens, you have to see Krishna in the situation and act in a Krishna consciously, which is not very difficult. Krishna advises us how to do it. Whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away in charity, whatever austerities you perform, do it as an offering to me. So that's our meditation. Whatever we're doing, we should try to do it as an offering to Krishna.
And if I may mention, this one devotee I met recently when I went to, well, I went to Brooklyn Temple, because Hansarupa, like I said, oh, Hansarupa, during Ratha Yatra, oh, thank you so much, it's so great. So yeah, but I didn't see you in a while. I said, I can't come tomorrow. And that's when I saw you uh, that Sunday. But I saw one devotee and he met Prabhupada in Delhi in 1964. And he says, back then I was just a poor student. He said, I had nothing. He says, now Lord blessed me with some stuff. It goes back to what you said. Back then he was poor. then now he's a little richer, and he's still a devotee. He still remembers God.
Right.
But in 1964, yeah.
Yes, Atmanavida Prabhu, what is your realization?
It's more of a question based on my contemplation of the points you've been making, if that's okay. Now, but if you think that my question's not pertinent,
No,
then
everything.
cut me off.
No.
But for me, I feel like it's pertinent, but I'm not sure I could explain why.
Question you want. Usually, whatever is on your mind, that's what you should bring out, and it not only helps you, but it helps all of us.
I've been chastised by my he is the right. So, but I feel like it's relevant because when I'm thinking about what you're saying, I'm thinking about because big picture, the points are like try to go back to God. don't be too attached. Don't engage in devotional service for in order to achieve temporary gain. So with that in mind, my question is about relationships with devotees and how so uh I I'm not sure if I can pinpoint the quote, but or the citation, but my understanding is that one. So we know that we shouldn't offend devotees, right? So that's Vaishnava Aparadha. It's the Hati Mata offense. But we've also heard, I think, that even if the devotee is offended, even if you didn't do something to offend him, try to avoid that. So I'm thinking in this world, it's hard to please everyone, and I know that over the years, there's at least a few devotees who I haven't pleased, to put it that's an understatement. There's at least a few, and there's more than that who I haven't pleased, but I work things out with them, and it's everything's good. But there's at least a few who I haven't pleased, and I'm thinking that because I may disagree with certain things that led to maybe how I expressed myself that didn't please them, I believe that that was correct. Now, of course, how you express yourself, uh, even if you're right, that could be adjusted. But still, I'm just thinking like I'm wondering, as time passes, as I get older, I would like to improve my life, my Krishna consciousness. I'm wondering what's getting in the way, and I'm wondering, um, are these is this going to be an impediment to my becoming pure? That there's a few people who I disagreed with over the years, and and I we didn't necessarily ever come to an come there was never necessarily harmony achieved thereafter.
Yeah, a very good question. There are two things that we have to look at: the time, place, and circumstance. Just like I wouldn't say heavily, but very strongly chastise devotees who hang on to incidents that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, come on. You've grown. I asked them, have you grown in 30 years? Then don't you think that person with whom you had that problem 30 years ago, do you think they've also grown? So we have to be intelligent like that. That you can't hold on to grudges. First of all, devotees shouldn't hold on to any grudge against anybody. But within the devotee community, things that have happened 30, 40 years ago, you don't hold on to. You let go. And we should understand again that somebody who was a neophyte 30 years ago could be a pure devotee right now. I'll give you an example. Prabhupada received a letter when he was here from a woman who said that she had met two book distributors. Sasha, ask those people to come in. Whenever you see somebody look curious, just tell them it's an open program. They can come in if they want. Tell them. Yeah, it's an open program. Everybody's invited. So anyway, so this lady wrote to Papa and said that she had met two of his followers or disciples, and she didn't like the interaction with them. And they tried to sell her some books, and she was very upset about how they dealt with her. So Papa wrote back and he said, I'm very sorry that this has happened in this way, but you should also understand that they're new devotees. They're trying to please their spiritual master by spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. They may not always do things correctly, properly, but from your point of view, you should see that this is a glorious activity. So we should think like that when we're dealing with devotees. Yes, when they're on a neophyte platform, they may think things that are not of the highest level. And that's why Rupa Goswami says, Krishneti Yasagirita Manasajeta. That you should at least mentally honor anybody who's chanting Hare Krishna. Even though their behavior is such that you don't want to associate with them closely. If somebody's chanting Hare Krishna, give them honor mentally. Now, when they get to the stage of advancing enough to taking initiation, then you should offer obeisances to such a person. And then he goes further to say that those who are strictly Krishna conscious, strictly engaged, then you should serve such a person. So we have to look at it like that. Yes, in our community, and that's why I always say, people will go around saying, I don't like ISKCON, they have so many problems. I said, you should tell them, Jai. Yes, we have problems. Why? Because we're preaching. You don't have any problems because you're not preaching. If you preach, you're always going to have a mixture of neophytes, medium, higher. It's all going to, and that's going to cause problems. Neophyte people sometimes create a lot of problems. Sometimes somebody rises up to a very high position and they fall down, which also creates problems. So when you preach and you create a society, there are always going to be problems. It's we're in the material world. Any society, any organization, whether spiritual or material, tells you we have no problem, they're lying or they're not doing anything. If you're doing something, you're always going to have problems. That's just the nature of this world. So all these other groups who split up from ISKCON or they go to this month or that month and they claim ISKCON has so many problems. Yeah, we have problems because we're preaching. You're not preaching. That's why you don't have any problems. So, but then to finish up with your question, Srila Prabhupada again set the example that although he was a pure devotee, and a pure devotee means you cannot criticize. Again, we've used this example of Arjuna so many times because he's a pure devotee of Krishna. Anybody who criticizes him for killing Karna when he was off his chariot, they're an offender. He was doing exactly what Krishna wanted him to do. So a pure devotee means a person who at every moment is doing exactly what Krishna wants him to do. So you cannot criticize. It's an offense. So even though Prabhupada was on that platform before he left, when his godbrothers came to Vrindavan just before Prabhupada left, he was apologizing. Oh, I was so heavy, and please forgive me. And they were at least advanced enough to say, no, 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 no. They called him Swami Maharaj. No, Swami Maharaj, you didn't take any offense. Prabhupada was preaching sometimes strongly to his godbrothers. You're not doing what Bhaktisiddhanta wanted you to do. You're not preaching. You didn't assist me when I asked like that. So Prabhupada gave some strong statements. So being a soft-hearted devotee, he was asking forgiveness before he left, but actually none was required because a pure devotee, everything they do is just what Krishna wants them to do. So if they preach heavily to their godbrothers, that's what Krishna wanted them to do. Now that doesn't mean we should imitate. Oh, Prabhupada preach strongly to his godbrothers, so we should preach strongly to our. No, we don't imitate. But at the same time, the fact that you're concerned means that you're a devotee. Someone who's not a devotee, they don't care. They don't care how many toes they step on, how many people they run over, they don't care. And therefore, there's a saying in the material world, be nice to the people that you meet on the way up, because you're going to meet the same people on the way down. Yes, Santi.
Yeah. You saying that among devotee, like thing who happened 20 years ago, we don't hold it on people. We might not hold it on people, like me personally. I'm not holding anything on people. But it's some things that can really affect your life, especially if the person doesn't say the truth and the person keeps saying it. And sometimes it can be very serious and it can affect your life very seriously. So and it's not like we holding it on a person, but if it's something pretty serious, So it can affect your life. If it's the law, you can, if it happened 100 years ago, if it's something pretty serious, you will still have to pay for it. If you have to go to prison or whatever, you have to pay for it. So if the person keeps saying, depend what's happened, and the person doesn't say the truth, and the person keeps saying it, and then he's not withholding it to the person, but it's a serious offense, and the person should say, shouldn't keep hold the thing that can affect the, sometimes depending how serious, like I just said, is the thing, it's really affecting your life pretty bad. And if it's something depending what it is, like I just said, eh ben, the law, everything, they're watching on you and everything. And if it's something pretty, depending what it is, I mean, you still have to pay for it. You still have to go to prison and pay for it, even if it's happened 100 years ago.
Okay, you brought up some very nice points. So we'll try to deal with. All right, so the first point is this. Our main concentration should always be on making advancement. And if we are seriously attached to making advancement, then we wish everybody else well to make advancement. Now, certain things should be dealt with right away. If somebody does something that you know is not proper, everybody has an authority. So you take it to the authorities. If you can't deal with it directly with the person, then take it to the authority. Don't let it fester, because the person who's affected the most by that negative festering is you.
Mhm.
So we don't want our consciousness dragged down by things that people do
But even
or say or whatever.
even
Yeah,
if you take
all
it
right,
to
then you leave it up to Christians.
still,
Then you leave it up to
still,
Christians.
still-
Then you leave it up to Krishna. Krishna is in complete control. That was the last thing Prabhupada, one of the last things Prabhupada said before he left this planet. He said, Krishna is in complete control. That is Krishna consciousness. So we always come back to that point. If I try my best to correct something, the person doesn't want to be corrected, and the authorities don't correct them, ultimately I leave it up to Krishna. Don't let it bother you to the point where your sadhana becomes affected. Yeah, yeah.
might not bother
Yeah.
the person, like, no, it doesn't bother me.
That's the main point.
But
Because this is why I speak to people stronger, because it bothers them.
it can affect
I mean, the devotees who are still bothered by things that happened 20, 30 years ago. That's silly.
it can
That,
affect your life seriously,
that,
not even
yeah, that means that they're not making spiritual progress. If you're making spiritual progress, you're not bothered. Not being bothered doesn't mean forgetting. I'm not saying forget. You don't forget. Prabhupada remembered everything practically in his life.
bother you,
Yeah,
but
but-
also society it's still going on.
Yeah,
and it
then
doesn't-
that's what I'm saying. So
that
then
is bothering you.
best of your capacity, you
Serious.
take it to the authorities. And then if the authorities don't do what's necessary, then what can you do? Then you leave it up to Krishna. You leave it up to Krishna. That's ultimately what, things don't get corrected immediately. Like when the demigods went to Lord Brahma to find out why things were going wrong in the universe, and he said, come with me to the ocean of milk. And Krishna said, I'm coming. I will take care of it. He didn't say, I'm going to take care of it right now. You're being bothered right now, so I'm going to kill them right now, and you go home happy. No, I'm coming eventually. He said, in the meantime, you just have to be patient. What can you do? Just like Lord Shingadev, and it was a very serious situation. Hiranyakashipu and his henchmen, they were creating havoc all over the universe. You would think, I pray to you, Lord, come and cut his head off right now. No, I'm coming. In the meantime, a lot of innocent people died before the Lord came. So you could say, what kind of God is that? Why doesn't he take care of it right now? He knows he's going to do bad things. Kill him right now. No, Krishna has his own time. And ultimately, again, we're dealing with non-material spiritual beings. None of us actually dies. So anybody who dies externally in the service of the Lord, even those who were opposing Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, because they died in the presence of Krishna, they got liberation. So we leave everything up to Krishna. Ultimately, we do our best. Doesn't mean don't do anything. Just turn a blind eye. No, you see something wrong, you try to correct it. But if, in spite of your endeavor, in spite of the authorities' endeavor, or you ask the authorities and things, then leave it up to Krishna. Otherwise, again, the person who's going to be the most affected is, and we don't want that. We want to be Krishna conscious, not problem conscious.
Yeah.
Not this person conscious. We want to be Krishna conscious. All right.
Just in support, just examples. I was thinking of a few examples. One is devotional example, one like contemporary example, to demonstrate that like there's to live in this world as a devotee or even as a non-devotee, the authorities the authorities don't necessarily carry out justice. So then you just have to rely on God. You can try to achieve you should try to achieve justice in this world by doing the right thing and by getting and trying to get others to do the right thing, or trying to change the system, so to speak, so that things will be carried out in the right way. But when they're not, then all that's left is to rely on Krishna. And so a couple examples I have is one, when we're devotees out there preaching, some even now sometimes there's sometimes when I've seen devotees get busted by police. They say you can't do this here, and maybe the devotee did something wrong, not wrong, but like maybe they weren't on like 100% best behavior. But sometimes no. Like I remember once we went out to Chicago with I was there with a few devotees, and they went out and they were just starting to distribute books. They didn't even really begin. And myself, I wasn't ready to start. I was chanting some japa or maybe having prasad, and I was sitting on by the box of books, and then the police came and they took these lady Sankirtan devotees. They handcuffed them. They're gonna take them away in the wagon. And I said, well, I'm like overseeing them, so I'd like to go with them. They said, all right, fine. And they handcuffed me too. I wasn't even distributing books. I wasn't doing anything. So it's no justice. Then eventually they said they found out when they had the police, and they're like, oh, they actually had a permit in Chicago. They actually had a permit. Like, why should you even need to have a permit? First Amendment right allows us to do this, but in Chicago, you need to have a permit to carry out your First Amendment rights somehow. But they had that permit, but they weren't wearing a necklace that had a display of that permit around their neck. And so the judge dismissed the case and said, please put on that necklace. Right, all right, fine. But anyway, one example. The other example is the most contemporary one that people are thinking about all the time, and not everyone necessarily agrees, but I mean, many persons would say that the executive branch of our government is who's Sasha, the executive branch of our government. I know some people feel strongly in here and people feel strongly everywhere, and some people would disagree with what I'm saying, but point is that many people would believe that the executive branch in many regards is not carrying out justice, and that's where the buck stops. And then the checks and balances system, there's three branches of the government. One is the judicial system, and then the top, the Supreme Court is loaded with justices, many of whom many persons would in society would feel that they're establishing the law in such a way that's in contravention with justice. So, whether that's true or it's not true, at least probably a large percent of the population would say it's true in some cases. So point is that this is the material world, and point is this is the material world, and what that means is there is no justice in the material world. The only justice is the fact that if you surrender to Krishna, and Krishna will give you justice because because of the material world, everything's up and down.
Outside of spiritual circles, people know that if you make it your business to be happy by changing others, you'll never be happy. And parents know that. You have a 2-year-old, sweetheart, do this. No, come over here. No. If you make it your happiness dependent on controlling others, you'll never be happy. So that's devotees don't go down that road. We practice what we preach, and we try to get others to practice because we know it works. But if they don't, and if they make mistakes, whatever, what can you do? You just keep on. And Lord Vishwamuni, about to end with this, in the fifth canto, he says that the king, the father, and the guru should give good instructions to the citizens, the offspring, and the disciples. If the disciples, the offspring, and the citizens don't follow properly, just keep on giving good advice. Don't get mad. Because if you get mad, the person who's giving the advice, if you get mad, then the whole thing is lost. So we have responsible positions, all of us. We're responsible to our relatives, our employees, if we have employees, or whatever. Everybody has some connection to somebody else. So part of that connection is try to give them Krishna consciousness. And that continues even when they take the Krishna consciousness. It's not that as soon as somebody picks up the beads and no more responsibility. We have a responsibility to try to elevate each other, to keep everything on the spiritual platform. And if somewhere or other it doesn't work, you don't connect with this particular person, or they remain mean after you chanting Hare Krishna for 10, 20 years, they're still on a mean streak. What can you do? Just keep trying to set the right example yourself. Keep trying to make progress yourself. Don't make your happiness dependent on changing somebody else. You'll remain miserable. Because even if you think you have done so, like parents, again, they get through the terrible 2s and 3s, and now they have a apparently normally adjusted child, and then something happens later on. They become a teenager, they discover pot or whatever, and again they flip. They turn against you. So you can never let your happiness be dependent on somebody else's performance. Your happiness should come from and will come from surrendering to Krishna to the best of your ability, chanting Hare Krishna as purely as possible. That's where happiness comes from. Otherwise, if you're depending on somebody else, and it goes for any kind of relationship, parent and child, husband and wife, friend and friend. How many friends have been stabbed in the back by somebody that they thought was a friend for decades? So that's the nature of the material world. Because when you're on the monorathena, those who are on the chariot of the mind, sometimes the mind will tell them to do things that you think is nice, and sometimes the same mind will tell them to do something that you think is abhorrent or you don't like. That's because they're on the mental platform. So as long as people are on the mental platform, you can't let their behavior be the guideline for your happiness, because they're never going to bring 100%, because they're not in control of themselves. They're being controlled by the modes of nature. We have to agree to be controlled by Krishna, or in this case, Krishna's representative. And when we do that, then our happiness becomes guaranteed.
I once met a woman, she was holding grudge for 50 years because when they were younger, one lady told her that she was a bad woman. Like she says, you're, you know, woman of the night, so to speak. But then she says 50 years later, I was talking to her and she hold that grudge still. She said, and that's why she had cancer, because she told me that.
Yeah.
That's material view.
All right, so we did 21, so next person gets to do 22. It's a very important chapter. This ninth chapter is such a nice chapter, so many wonderful verses. Of course, everything Krishna said is important, but this ninth chapter, as he himself says, most confidential knowledge.
Beautiful.
Jai, Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, or Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Right. Prabhu, we do kirtan now. Do you lead kirtan this time?
I'm not a kirtan. My voice is horrible. Maybe your wife. Somebody with a good voice should lead.
Ganesh.
Oh, Ganesh, are you like to lead kirtan? Huh?
Are we gonna play Mridanga?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. It can be like I was informed that you're going to be
So many
roughly
points.
Yeah.
You brought out some good points.
Mero, bring the microphone to Guneshwar.
He plays it out.
Archita, Guneshwar can. I think you want.
Do you want to play Mridanga? I thought he was going to play harmonium.
Give some room for him. Yeah. I learned this from Archita. Have this leg parallel with his bar, and there's inclined to.
Because we had a constant.
Very interesting.
Match, yeah, and then turn off.
And that pillow, made that pillow.
You see.
Yeah.
Vishnu Padana, Krishna Krishna Shema
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
And we'll do. I'll sing the singing prayers too. Do you favorite all of those?
You want bigger?
Yeah, can I get a little shorter? I think it's, the microphone is too heavy for that light.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Maybe we should get a better microphone stand.
That's for sure.
A heavier microphone stand.
Like the one we had before.
Yeah, I purchased the microphone, but not the stand.
Okay, yeah.
I'll just move my head.
Move my head on. So it goes.
Namaste Narasingharaya. Namaste
Everybody tell them get them to string oil from my input.
Oh wow.